Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our employer webinar titled Transitioning to the New Customer Service Practitioner Apprenticeship Standards. We want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. Before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to explain a few things about our webinar platform to allow you to get the most out of the experience. So all of our viewers will be in listen-only mode. However, to engage with the webinar, please use the on-screen panel. Using the tabs of this panel, you can adjust your audio settings and choose the webcam of our presenters if available. You can also use the question and chat tabs to engage with us. We expect that our webinar will be extremely popular, but our team will do our best to answer all of your questions. During our webinar, we'll be running a number of polls. To record your response, please click on the on-screen voting button when asked to do so. After the webinar, we will be providing a recording of the webinar and the slides and a fact sheet to address any unanswered questions. Now, I'd like to hand over to our presenters, Mandy Slaney and Linda Orr.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining the webinar. I'm Mandy Slaney and I'm the Industry Manager for Business Skills, and we're going to run through the transition to how we can support you going forwards. We have included a lot of information in the slides because we are aware that people are at all different levels of understanding. So hopefully, we have put enough information for you to be able to gather some information, useful information from today. The presentation really will provide you with an update where we are and also what our offer is going to be, and also how can we support you with this transition to the new customer service apprenticeships. This is new for us as well, so hopefully together we can help each other to take this forward successfully. So what we're going to cover today, so it's going to be a very brief overview of the apprenticeship reforms. We do have additional webinars where you can find out lots more information around the reforms, so please join them, which are recorded on our website. Planning your transition, customer service practitioner standard, planning your delivery, points to consider, how we can support you to prepare for delivery and endpoint assessment. Next steps, questions and answers. So an overview of the apprenticeship reform. Apprenticeships are changing, and we are both part of that change. So the key facts, really, number one is to give employers control in designing apprenticeships, increase the flexibility of the delivery, simplify the funding, and increase the effectiveness of the training. So this is just the highlights really of the funding changes. Again, we have a very in-depth funding webinar which will be ongoing, as we know there's lots of changes around funding. But just to give you sort of an update on where does customer service fit into the changes. So as you can see, the customer service, because it is a new apprenticeship standard, they will change from May. And so the funding band on that will change to funding band 6, which is £4,000. So overall, the maximum that you could gain from that would be the £5,000. Now, other points to consider is there are some apprenticeships that haven't moved into the new world, into the new apprenticeship standards. For example, the business administration. So that until the assessment plan is approved and it's actually approved ready for delivery, that you would continue with the SASE Framework, which would be the revised funding from May, as you can see in the slide.
Okay, so we've got a poll question. So the question is, which of the following apprenticeship frameworks will you be offering? So we have customer service practitioner, customer service specialist, business administrator, all of the above, or customer services only. Okay, so we have a lot of all of the above.
Planning your transition. So why planning is so important? Reforms are happening now. You need to plan now. Our research with customers tells us that there is high level of concern around the readiness to delivery of the new standards and the impact of the funding changes from May. Hopefully this presentation may reassure you that your plans are either well on track, or it may help you to identify your action plan to move forward. And as a key customer, we can help you with that. Feedback from centres has been around, you know, many centres are not ready yet for delivering the new standards. So, you know, you could be at risk of actually falling behind the competitors if you're not planning. And also, several providers are looking at focusing on certain industry areas to make sure they can maximise on the opportunities that there are for the new apprenticeship standards. Decisions you need to make, challenges, old versus the new. So, you know, should you stay with this current SASE frameworks? The funding may not be enough to deliver, and there may be potential loss of revenue. Or stay with the SASE frameworks for now, probably short term, in order to actually plan your delivery and embed the new standards. Move to the new standards straight away. Several providers have fed back that, you know, they are looking to move from May, particularly because of the funding changes, or switch off delivery and the loss of income. So, you know, there are key things that you need to be planning. So understanding the old and the new, what are the key changes? So the SASE frameworks, we have the initial assessment, on the job, off the job, mandatory qualifications. There are no mandatory qualifications in the new customer service practitioner standards. However, we will be offering qualifications and developing new ones due to the demand. Maths and English, personal learning thinking, employment rights and responsibility, completion certification, occupational competence. In the new standards, exactly the same with the initial assessment, which again is going to be absolutely crucial that you do make sure that, you know, you've got a robust initial assessment. On programme and off the job, again, that's, you know, key area that providers and employers are concerned about is what, you know, what is on the job, what is off the job, and how can you, you know, what can you put in them spaces. The key difference obviously is at gateway, and that is where the employer and provider agree that the learner is ready to go forward for the gateway. Endpoint assessment, completion certification, and occupational competence. 6 key steps to develop an apprenticeship programme. Understanding the programme, understanding the funding, and how and what the impacts may be from May. What is your people plan? You know, have you got the right people in place? Do they need to be different? You know, it is a totally different new world. Certainly with regards to the types of people that are going to be delivering the standards, you know, certainly around coaching and mentoring and tutors, you know, have you got the right people? Are you going to have to do CPD to upskill or recruit new people? Review current training programmes and where the occupations can be mapped to the new apprenticeship standards. Decide which programme to deliver and how you're going to deliver the apprenticeship programmes, and ensuring readiness to deliver.
Okay, so we've got another poll. So the question is, to what extent does your organisation understand the changes to apprenticeships funding and delivery arrangements? So we have low level to little understanding, medium level, high level, or no. Okay, so we've got quite a few, over half is medium levels, the next in line is high level.
Good afternoon, I'm Linda Orr and I'm the technical expert. We're now going to move on to the Customer Service Practitioner Standard, and this is the actual standard which some of you will have some knowledge of and some will have little knowledge of. So you will forgive us if for some of you we are going over some old ground. Here you have the Customer Service Practitioner Standard, and they were developed by the following employers. You'll see the list of the employers there. The employers set up working groups, and the Level 2 standard, Customer Service Practitioner, was developed by the above group of employers. At a later stage, the awarding organisations were brought in to give assistance with, for example, the grading and assessment plan. We were brought in at a slightly earlier stage for the level 3, which, as you know, has not as yet been fully approved. But overall, the two standards were essentially developed and driven by the employers, and that's the important thing for you to note. They were developed and driven by employers. As you can see, there is a diverse group of employers, and the standards were developed to cover the wide range of industries that they are from. Here you have a group of employers covering, for example, retail, admin, sales, and call centres, and the standard was written to ensure the framework could be delivered in all of these areas. The Level 2 standard and assessment plan can be obtained from the website noted on the slide, and other standards can also be obtained from www.gov.uk. On this slide, you will see that the flowchart that Mandy has already discussed. What we have is that in the Customer Service Practitioner Standard, like all of the other standards, we do have to make sure we have an initial assessment, and it's very important, as you need to be very careful and ensure that you plan delivery and make sure you know what your candidate needs and your employers too in the way of support. Remember too that your candidates are going to have to be working on maths and English, and that in the Customer Service Practitioner Standard there is no mandatory qualification, but as Mandy has said, we will be offering a new qualification, and we have mapped this standard to the existing qualification too. What is new is obviously this gateway, and the gateway is a meeting of the employer and the provider, and during that meeting they then sign off the learner as being ready for the endpoint assessment. And this will have to be done at after the 12-month stage. It can't be done before then. What we do have in this flowchart compared to the other flowchart is the actual endpoint assessment. And the endpoint assessment for this particular standard for Customer Service Practitioner is that the candidates will be assessed on their apprenticeship showcase, on a practical observation that will be a minimum of 1 hour, and professional discussion, which will be a maximum of 1 hour. These will be assessed, and then obviously, hopefully, there will be completion and certification, and then we'll be saying that the candidate is occupationally competent. The actual Customer Service Practitioner Standard is for those carrying out a first-line customer service role. There are 19 modules, and they are split into 3 sections covering knowledge, skills, and behaviours attitude. The modules are found in the Customer Service Practitioner Standard, which is a standalone document outlining each module. However, more detail can be found in an assessment plan, which outlines the modules, pass and distinction requirements, and the method of assessment. If you look at the slide, you will see that we have product and service knowledge in red, and that's because on the next slide we have the actual standard. What you have is the module, and the module is obviously product and service knowledge, and then it's laid out in terms of a standard, what the candidate needs to do, then pass and distinction, and the method of assessment. This module, as I said, is one of 19, and as you can see, the standard is understand the product or services that are available from your organisation and keep up to date. Now, it's very important that you realise that these standards have been written for the candidate. So we are talking about your organisation, i.e. the candidate's organisation. The next bit is about what I need to know. And what we have there is, it's what your organisation's products or services are. An important thing to note here is it's what I need to know, in other words, what the candidate needs to know. The difference in this framework is the fact the standard very much relates to what the candidate does, knows, and is very much related to the candidate's own workplace and own role, which is very different from previous qualifications, which we're very generic. You have here pass and distinction, and all of the standards have pass criteria, but not all of the standards have the distinction criteria. The other thing you should note is that the method of assessment will vary from module to module. As I said, there is pass and distinction, so the grading is extremely important. You will see here that all of the candidates required to pass all criteria, all pass criteria has to be achieved for the candidate to get a pass. When it comes to distinction, they require to get 7 out of 10 distinction criteria in the apprentice showcase. They also have to get 4 out of the 5 in the practical observation, which, as I previously said, is 1 hour, and the professional discussion, where they have to get 3 out of the 4 distinction, which is a maximum of 1 hour. When you actually get the assessment plan and see each module, you will see more clearly how distinction is achieved. But it's important to note that candidates must achieve all of the pass criteria to pass. We're now going to look at how you will plan your delivery and the points that you need to consider. So what do you need to consider? Well, first of all, you've got to consider what is the apprenticeship you're going to offer, what suits the employer and candidate. It's important to familiarise yourself with the standards and the assessment plan, and important to note that the plans are different according to the apprenticeship. You've then got to consider how are you going to register your candidates, where are you going to register them. You need to consider the timelines and how will you meet them. Timelines are extremely important here in the new framework. What support materials do you already have? Can you use them? And what other ones do you need to develop, or can we assist you with all of that? What staff do you need? And Mandy's already touched on that. What staff do you need? How are you going to use your existing staff? Will they need to have some form of retraining? You'll also consider what is the endpoint assessment and how will you book that? Who is going to liaise with the endpoint assessment organisation and what liaison will be required? This liaison is very important, and we will discuss that in a little bit more detail. And you also need to know what is required to organise to have an efficient endpoint assessment. If you are employers, you can operate alone or with a training provider, and obviously the training providers will link with employers. You've also got to remember that your learners will not only need to complete the standards through an endpoint assessment, but they will also require to do maths and English. As I said, you need to look at the different roles for your staff. You will also need to make sure that you're using your employer staff. You'll need to make more use of your employer staff, and you will need to be aware your own staff will be acting more as support, preparing learners for endpoint assessment and not assessing them. A qualification, as you note, is not a requirement of the framework, but many centres employers have already said that they do want to include one. And we are, as I said before, looking at developing a new qualification. For your endpoint assessment, an efficient endpoint assessment will be dependent on you having learners fully prepared by the time of the booked endpoint assessment. And for an efficient endpoint assessment, you're going to have to make sure that someone is responsible for basics like organisation of, for example, a quiet room to be used for the professional discussion, and nothing else. And you will need to ensure that somebody is liaising with the endpoint assessor on the day.
Okay, so we've got another poll question here. So, what do you consider to be the greatest challenge to your own staff of delivering apprenticeships? So we have putting systems and processes in place, having the right expertise in-house to deliver apprenticeships, understanding funding rules and regulations, what to spend the levy on. establishing the on-program delivery and assessment material. As it looks like the majority are establishing the on-program delivery and assessment materials.
Okay, well, on that, how can we support you to prepare for delivery and endpoint assessment? What you have in this slide is a list of the various resources and support that we can offer. We are working on those at present, and there are timelines showing when they will be available, and that will be covered on a different slide. We will have smart screen resources as before, and we will have Learning Assistant. But additionally, there will be further webinars and CPD events. At present, we are developing a task manual and endpoint assessment packs, and more information is available on these on future slides. The task manual will also be signposted to Maths and English, and there will also be additional support for the functional skills. One thing to note is this apprenticeship does not include a qualification, however it has been mapped. An example is on the next slide. We will be continuing with the existing qualification for the foreseeable future. However, we are developing a new qualification that will 100% cover the standards. We have, as I said, mapped the customer service practitioner to the existing qualification. The new standards are different in layout and delivery, but there are similarities in content. As a result, we've mapped them to the existing standards, and we will be offering this mapping to centres by the use of a password. But here is an example of the mapping. You will see that again we've used the product and service knowledge, and most of the qualification, most of the standard does map to the existing qualification, but there are some gaps. And these gaps are mainly where the candidate needs to be aware of their own job role and their own customers and organisation. And you will see in italics where the learner must understand the difference between providing a product and providing a service, and they should also be able to explain why it's important to update their knowledge on the organisation's products and services. So where we have mapped across, you will see the different units and also the learning outcomes that fit, but you will see in italics where you will need to add some extra activities or extra experience in to ensure that the candidates are covering those areas in italics. As we have said, we are offering a task manual. And this task manual will be completed by the learner and will assist them in the preparation of the showcase portfolio. There are 15 tasks for the learner to complete to ensure that they cover all of the standards, and each one contains a list of the key terms and their definitions, details on how each of the tasks relates to the standards, a lot of activities for them to prepare so that they can actually check that the learner has understood things. There are also practical tasks to allow the learner to apply their knowledge to their own role and organisation, and this is very important that we do make sure that they are applying their knowledge to their own role and organisation. And there will be reflective practice for the learner to consider what they've learned and what they need to improve on and how to do it. The task manual will also include, as it says there, a mapping document detailing how the tasks meet the standards, a progress task tracker, and a list of key milestones, because we've been asked by people to show what the key milestones are. There's also information on how to use the manual as part of the programme, and it will also include signposting, as we said previously, to Maths and English. We also felt it was very important to ensure that we do have an efficient endpoint assessment. So we have developed 2 packs. There's a pack for centres, customers and employers, and there is a pack for the endpoint assessor. The key document for the centres, customers and employers is this endpoint assessment pack, and it does tell them how to plan and prepare for the apprenticeship. It will include the standard. It will be guidance on how to book the endpoint assessment, which obviously a lot of you have indicated you want to know information on. There will be guidance on how the showcase portfolio will be assessed. We will be looking at relevant sections of the occupational brief to show the kind of evidence that we will expect to see. There will be guidance on what situation will need to be set up for a valid practical observation to take place, because obviously we have to make sure that the practical observation meets the various parts of the standard that say that practical observation is necessary for. And there will be guidance on how the professional discussion will work. When it comes to the endpoint assessment pack for the independent assessors, it will include guidance for the independent assessor on how they will review the showcase portfolio against the relevant sections of the occupational brief. And there will also be guidance on what they need to see as part of the valid practical observation, and what will happen if they don't see the activities listed in the brief. There will also be guidance on a professional discussion, including questions to ask and any prompting if necessary, and how to record the discussion. This pack is extremely important to ensure that we have consistency in the endpoint assessment, and also to ensure that we are giving as much guidance as possible to our endpoint assessors.
Hi, I'd like to just now give an update on timeline of events, because I'm sure everybody's keen to find out what will be available when. So going from May, the Wall Garden, so that's the portal that you do the registrations currently, will be available for registrations for the on-programme and endpoint assessment. The first two tasks will be available, and we are going to try and get additional tasks which will follow in the following months. The actual published version of the task manual will be available from August. The EPA packs and point assessment packs will be available as part of the on-programme from May, and also the smart screen mapping. So all the existing qualifications to the new standards and the resources that are already there on Smart Screen, which is our online resource portal, will be available. We'll also be gathering feedback from provider centres, employers, to say what else is it that you need, you know, because we very much want to make sure we develop the right things for you, so we would really value that feedback. With regards to future webinars, that is to be confirmed, but are these useful? You know, are there any particular topics you would like to go forward? And also, really, can we plan that in order for you to sort of help you with the progression through the planning and getting preparation for the endpoint assessment? So when do these webinars need to be, or does it need to be in a different format? The endpoint assessment booking reservation. So first of all, you would register, and then you would book the reservation when you are ready for the endpoint assessment. The window for that will be open in July, and how it will be built is very similar to how it is now. So you will be given a 6-digit equivalent to the old qualification number, which will actually enable you to be able to register and book the endpoint assessment. The new task manual, as I said before, will be ready in August, and the new qualification will be ready going forward from September. We have extended the existing qualifications, which were due to expire at the end of August. They've been extended for another year. The price and offer. So the actual package price will include the on-programme delivery support, so that will be all your endpoint assessment support packs, that will be the task manual, and the endpoint assessment will be £580. I'm sure you've got lots more questions around that, so there is an inbox, which is apprenticeships@cityandguilds.com, that you can ask further questions or speak. They'll be able to put you in touch with a business manager. Okay. Approval process. So if you are not a City and Guilds approved centre, you know, there are different things that you need to plan in. So you would have to apply for that. And obviously this is very different because there is no formal qualification in the standard. So really it is more of a sort of a financial approval to put you on our system and to make sure you're ready, because we will invoice when you book the endpoint assessment and the registration. And also, if you want to to actually apply for endpoint assessment, you will have a very light touch approval process, very similar to the qualification approval. So you just have to put the numbers on and say which standards you would like to apply for. As Linda alluded to before, the assessment pack will be available on the website once you have registered, and there will be a password. If you are delivering the qualifications, you will then have to ensure that you have the right staff that can have the occupational expertise as it is in the assessment strategy for the qualification as a requirement. Endpoint assessment registration. So this is really to show you the process and how it will work. So initially you will register the learner, the on-programme and endpoint assessment at the start of the learner starting on-programme. The booking reservation, that you book a reservation and you select a month that you would like the endpoint assessment to take place. That has to be done 90 days prior to endpoint assessment, and that is when you pay the remaining fee. So the upfront registration fee will be £100, which you'll pay at the beginning, and then the reservation booking will be the remainder, which would be the £480. Then the next is you agree a date for the endpoint assessment with provider or employer, whichever you are that's going to be doing that. So that date is agreed with City and Guilds. Then the SFA data capture form. We issue a form which needs to be completed in order for us to be able to process the actual certification going forwards if the learner actually passes. And then the provider and employer submits the gateway and the declaration form. Okay, so once the apprentice has actually passed, so the grades are agreed, the provider or employer receives the City and Guilds endpoint assessment certificate, the endpoint assessment SFA data form is uploaded, and then the SFA will issue a certificate, and that actually is to the employer. Okay, so we are recruiting assessors. So we have there is a section on our website where you can apply to be an independent endpoint assessor. And there's all the standards on there that we're actually that are vacancies at the moment. We also are looking at a supplier contract. So if you are a provider and you are interested in talking to us about actually supplying assessors, then we do have a contract facility for that, and we will be open to discussions to talk you through the process and how you would be approved for that. Next steps.
So we have another poll question. So this question is, what do you intend to do Apprenticeship Framework? So we have, as soon as we can, in May, in September, or we haven't as yet decided. More time. Okay, so it's kind of split between in May and we haven't yet decided, which is quite interesting.
So, how would you like to take things further? We are developing and have some lots of different things in place. So there are workshops and CPD and a consultancy offer, really to help you, understand your needs. What are the solutions? How can we support you with that and implement the change? There's lots of resources available on our website and also the details of future webinars. There's an apprenticeship inbox, and we will be updating. I know many people have actually said, when will it be on the website? You will start to see things going up there now. We weren't in a position to actually advertise until we were on the register for the endpoint assessment, which we are now. So you will see things starting to be uploaded around all the different areas. So hopefully you'll find things. A fact sheet should be there very shortly, and that will really give you an overview of the standard and what's involved. There's also, I would really recommend that you look at these documents if you've not already. So things like the funding rules, there's recently was an update on that, and there's lots of changes, but certainly in there it gives you guidance around what can be funded, what can't be funded, additional information about the off the job, on the job. So really do look at that documentation. One of the things I'd just like to add is, even though today is about customer service practitioner, we are developing on program for the customer service specialist and the business administrator. At the moment, the assessment plans have still not been approved for delivery, so we will be providing more information on that as soon as they have been approved. Any questions?
Okay, so